Welcome to Your Vocal Evolution, the show where every week you'll get actionable tips in vocal technique, artistry, health, and more, all in 10 minutes or less. I'm your host, voice professional, and Evolve Vocal Studio founder, Amber Maud Cathy. Your best voice is just a tip away, so let's start evolving. Hello, singers, and welcome to Your Vocal Evolution, Tips in 10 with me, Amber Maud Cathy. And today, not just me, I have my first guest, which I am so excited about, Dr. Gena Thurston. Gena is a physical therapist, a voice specializing physical therapist. She has worked with productions that you may have heard of, like Hamilton and Aladdin and Stomp. She was the physical therapist working with the cast in those productions. She has worked with a number of vocal artists, with musicians, with actors in film and television and theater. And I'm so thrilled to have her here with us today to share some info and tips on dealing with tension. So welcome, Gena.
Thanks, Amber. I'm honored to be your first guest.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to have you. And Gena and I were talking right before, and we could chat. We could really get going.
Yes.
So we're going to do our best to keep this to 10 minutes or less. So I'd love for you to jump in. And I know you're voice specializing. I know that also kind of limits everything that you do. You work with so many people on just getting healthier function.
Yes. I'm very lucky to work with you and other people. Like, it's being in Nashville. I mean, I'm sure, obviously, it's not hard to get a singer every now and then, and getting kind of the mix of everybody from, I have a little girl who's in high school who's in her musical theater class and wanting to pursue Broadway dreams. And then you get someone who was, one of the first people on the Broadway show Annie, and he's retired. And it's just kind of cool seeing a little bit of everything.
Yeah, no, in Nashville, which is where Gena's based,
Mm-hmm.
which is where we first connected, and Gena has worked on me personally many times. Throw a rock, and you're gonna find a singer.
Exactly.
That is for sure. Well, I'd love for you to share, a tip with our listeners, or tips, kind of your thoughts on something to help them with the tension that's just part of it. One, because we're humans, and two, because singing is such an athletic activity.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure it gets overused too, but I do call them vocal athletes. I mean, a lot of people put the time, the effort in doing this daily, and you have to look at it as you have to train for it, recover for it. I mean, it's definitely athletic, and my job is to work on the muscles that allow us to sing. This is my number one tip: work with someone like Amber to work on technique, but that is not my role. My role is what is causing dysfunction in the body that's not allowing us to sing or fatigue early or have pain. And I think that's where my first thing I would tell people is, just because your tension and your pain and your dysfunction is happening in your voice, it could be coming from a number of things, whether it's a cervical dysfunction, whether it's neurological, pelvic floor dysfunction, maybe tension in the rib cage. Maybe I had a patient recently, she just had a baby, and breath work is kind of a mess. And That's a big part of what I do, is figuring out, okay, what's the root cause, and what do we need to look at? Do we need to look at warm up? Do we need to look at how you're training? Do we need to look at your recovery, range of motion, all these things that just plays a big role, and treat effectively and quickly so they can get back to what they love to do.
Well, I can think of a singer. I'd worked with her for a long time. I knew she had good technique. I knew that, she warmed up, she cooled down, she did all these things. She went on a trip home. She came back and she felt a lot of tension in the voice, though we should point out, when you feel it in the voice, you're not feeling your actual vocal folds. Right? So people will be like, oh, I feel it right here. You're not feeling those. You might be feeling the neck. You might be feeling, like you said, a number of things, because it's all connected. But it ended up being, I finally got her in to see you, and she had fallen down the stairs, which she didn't tell me, hurt her shoulder, and that had caused her larynx to rise. And so you had some sessions with her, released her shoulders, got the larynx to drop, and she's been zero issues ever since.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of that's a big part of my job is kind of like the detective work of what's driving this issue, and sometimes it's even something as silly as figuring out how they're performing. I had a girl recently she had a MTD diagnosis from Vanderbilt and had worked there, no results, and she was part of a trio, and turns out she was to the far right, constantly looking at her other members to the left, and it created this cervical dysfunction where she was tight on one side, weak on the other, and I made one small adjustment to change her spot to the left or to turn her body, not her neck, completely went away.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I don't you love those kind of scenarios because you're like, you save the day and you're like, make this little change. So if there is, the kind of the main things, let's say tension in the neck or tension in the tongue or tension in the jaw, do you have like a stretch or any kind of self treatment or treatments that you might recommend for singers to maybe play with, try and see how that feels in their voice and body if they're feeling tension?
Yeah, I would say my favorite, like quickest, most basic one is to take your hand onto your sternum, apply pressure down, lift the chin up and hold. You will stretch along the throat. You can even bias your right side or your left side by turning your chin. That's the easiest way to get stretch in those hyoid muscles that allow or they assist with a lot of the vocal production. That's one of my like first go-tos.
I love that one too. I kind of say, so just for people who are like, put pressure on the sternum, you're kind of saying collarbone area and
Yep.
gently tug
Mhm.
down,
Yeah,
right?
collarbone. And it's almost like a skin drag. You're just dragging the skin down, and then once you lift, you'll feel that pull right along the front.
Yeah, I love that one too. And once you're tipped back, sometimes, I think you're the person who told me to do this. Sometimes when I'm here, I can give myself kind of an underbite to
Mm.
make it even deeper. And
Yeah.
then this is an area where if I'm tight, I do this one pretty much every day.
Yes.
Sometimes the underbite is not happening.
Yeah.
And that's a good, like, just that kind of alerts me to say, okay, we need to spend a little bit more time here.
Exactly.
Um, Releasing some of this tension.
Exactly. You can stick your tongue out, move your tongue side to side. You can play around with it, add your own flair.
Yeah. No, I love it. And that seems, like you said, it seems so simple, but if you do it regularly, it can make a big difference. Like for some people, that should be more the focus of your warm up, I would say,
Yes.
depending on what's going on with you.
Yes, especially we live in a world where everything is forward based. Our heads are always down. We need to get those necks back.
Yes, amen. Well, I'm so glad to have you on now and have you share tips on self treatment because you are going to be doing a workshop with the studio. If anybody who is listening to this before October 25th, we have with the Vocal Pro membership, which I'll put the details down there below. I won't take the time to explain it all because it's just a ridiculous amount of awesomeness for all singers who want to feel and sound and think like a professional. But we have an expert workshop every month, and Gena is doing ours on October 25th, a Friday at 1 p.m. Central Time, I believe.
Yes.
And it's tension relief for the vocal athlete. So self massage, self treatment tactics for singers and voice users. If you're listening to this before October 25th and you want to learn more from the fantastic Dr. Gena Thurston, I'm going to put a link in the show notes and you can join the Vocal Pro membership for absolutely free for 2 weeks. Come to this exclusive workshop and for a grand total of $0. If you are listening to this after October 25th, do not fret. Everything will be recorded and you can come and still join the membership free for 2 weeks and watch Gena's workshop and get all these tips recorded that you can start to use in your own voice and body. And I would love, Gena, like I said, anytime I'm in Nashville, now that I'm no longer there, but I come and see you, can you share with people where they can find you if they are in the Nashville area or if they're on tour and coming through, where they can book an appointment with you? And I'll put that down in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at Steve Kravitz Physical Therapy in Green Hills. You can always email me too at Gena, Gena, at stevekravitz.com.
Yay! Thank you so much, Gena, for being my first guest. So great to see you and to learn from you. And I'm excited to see you on the 25th of October.
Yes, me too. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody, and see you next episode.